Hey guys, it's Chris. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this beautiful t-shirt yarn bag. Do y'all see how pretty this is? Summer is coming up. It's already summer for me basically. It's always hot here. So if y'all want a cute bag for the summer, watch my tutorial and follow my tutorial, guys. And I know I've been there. I've been on Pinterest scrolling and scrolling, and I see these gorgeous t-shirt yarn bags and I'm like, how do y'all make this? Y'all see these bags like this one and this one and that one and that one? Yes, I'm gonna teach you guys how to make those. I'm basically just we're going to be making this bag in the tutorial, but I'm going to be giving you guys tips on how to adjust the size of the bottom, what lengths you need, and different ways to do the handles. You guys can also find different stitches if you want to do a mesh stitch, whatever, it still works. I'm trying to basically help you guys customize whatever bag you want, so if you're interested, keep watching. So what you guys are gonna need to make these t-shirt yarn bags are some t-shirt yarn. It really depends on what size bag you're making. Most of the regular sized shoulder bags or like handbags that I make, I only use 2 of these, but for the beach bag, I used a little bit under 4. You're gonna need 2 different colors for, you know, the little extra added pizzazz basically. So I'm using the Batello t-shirt yarn and I get this off of Amazon. I'm also using a 12mm crochet hook. You need a pair of scissors, 4 stitch markers, maybe you'll need more, maybe you'll need less, and a darning needle. So we're just gonna get started. So I'm just gonna be taking both strands of the yarn and we're gonna make a slip knot. So to make a slip knot, you're gonna have the tail end of your yarn hanging like on the left side. You're gonna grab it with these 2 fingers. Then you're gonna take the yarn that you're holding with your right hand, wrap it around in like an X situation, flip your finger over, just push your hook through and pull your yarn through. So that's how you make a slip knot. So next we're going to be making a chain. So you're gonna chain up 15. Let's count. So 1 2 3 4 13 14. Okay, so now we have 15 chains to start. You're going to skip the first chain and do 3 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. So we're gonna, and I'm using the back loop. You can do whichever loop you feel comfortable with. So after I do my first single crochet, I'm gonna put a stitch marker and then I'm gonna do 2 more. Just get it in there, you guys. 2 3, and then on the third single crochet I'm gonna be putting another stitch marker. So I'm gonna keep going down until I get to my very last chain. I forgot that I'm doing this for complete beginners, so I'm going to be showing you guys how I do a single crochet, or how to do a single crochet. You're just going to push your hook through the loop. You're gonna pull the yarn back through that loop. You're gonna yarn over and pull through both. So let me show that to you guys. Again, we're going to go into our chain. You can do the back loop, you can do the top loop, you could go through the V, whatever makes you more comfortable. You're gonna yarn over and then you're gonna pull through both loops on your hook. I'm gonna do that one more time for you guys. So you're gonna take your loop, you're gonna push your hook through that loop, pull the yarn back through the loop, yarn over, and pull through both. And we're just gonna go down the chain until we get to the very last. Okay, so I made it to my very last stitch. I'm going to go into this final stitch with 3 single crochets, just as we did with the first one. I'm going to mark the first single crochet that I did, and then I'm going to do the second one. And as you can see, the work, basically, you're starting to go onto the other side, which is what we want, so don't be alarmed. We're gonna do the last one, and you can start working over your slip knot and your loose end. Now I'm just going to mark my very last stitch. In between each of the stitch markers, you're supposed to have 12 stitches. So in between these two on this side, you should have 12 stitches, and in between these two on the other side, you're also supposed to have 12 stitches. More chains, you'll probably end up with 15 or 16 or 17. Just make sure the number of stitches in between your stitch markers is the same on both sides. And no matter which round you're on, we're gonna start doing our increase rounds. Every single time in between your stitch markers are gonna be the same number. So if in row 1, the number between your stitch markers is 12, in row 2 of the bottom part of the bag, in between your stitch markers should also have 12. It'll make sense more when we start doing the increase rows to get the bag to have like a flat bottom. Okay? So I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna go into my 12 single crochets here until I get back to my first marked stitch. Sometimes the hook is really hard to go in. You just gotta shove it in there. It'll go in there. And make sure you weave or you work over your ends if you don't want to weave them in at the end of the project. I'm just gonna keep fighting with this, and then I'll come back to you guys when I make it to my last stitch marker. Actually, yeah, whatever, my first stitch marker, this one. Okay, I've made it to the very last stitch before my stitch marker, so I'm just going to go into that. Y'all, my hands are already hurting so bad. Like, t-shirt yarn is no joke. Okay, so we just finished the very last single crochet. I'm going to take the stitch marker out of my first stitch. I'm going to go into that stitch and I'm going to do a slip stitch. So it's basically like a single crochet. You go into the stitch, you pull up a loop, but instead of yarning over and pulling through, you're gonna take the yarn that's at the front right here and you're gonna pull it through the one at the back, and that's how you make a slip stitch. Then you're just gonna tighten it up. You're just gonna pull on it and tighten it up a little, pull your yarn back down on the hook, and now I'm gonna chain 1. So I just did my slip stitch as well as my chain 1. If you want to make a bag like this where the bottom isn't necessarily thick, you can just start going into the side of the bags, no increases. You just do either a single crochet into each stitch, you can do a mesh stitch, or you can do this is called the jasmine stitch. That's why it looks like little flowers. But I only did just 1 row. I just went around the chain 1 time for this bag. As well as for this bag, I did do more chains for my foundation chain, and that's why it's so wide compared to this one. But as you can see, it's flat. It doesn't really have like a structured bottom, it's just flat. So I basically just went around this completely with single crochets for my second row. I didn't do any increases, right? The reason you would want to do increases, now this is a big bag, so my chain was a lot more than any other bag I've made. As you guys can see, like, there's this flat bottom right here. So that's what I'm going to show you guys right now, how to do the increases to get like a flat bottom before you start working the sides up. And this is for a beach bag. So if you want to make a beach bag, just make sure you make your chain longer, and then I'm going to move into the next steps to show you guys how to get this flat bottom. Okay, so let's get into the increases. For the increases, I'm going to be doing, okay, so in every single one of these stitches, Remember in the first chain we had put 3 single crochets. We're going to be doing double crochets into all of them. So remember I had removed the stitch marker from this first stitch. So I'm going to be putting an increase into that stitch, and an increase is basically just 2 double crochets, or sorry, we're working with single crochets, 2 single crochets into the same stitch. And I'm going to mark the first single crochet that I did, not the last one, the first one. Just going to mark that. Then there's this middle one that was in between the 2 stitch markers. I'm going to be doing 2 single crochets into that one as well. And then here's the very last one that we had a stitch marker on. I'm going to be doing 2 single crochets into this one as well. And then I'm going to put the stitch marker onto the very last single crochet. I keep feeling like saying double crochets. Now, remember how I explained to you guys that in between the stitch markers, there should always be 12 stitches. No matter how many increase rows you do, it will always be 12 stitches in between. Well, it also depends on how much is in your chain, but the same amount should always be in between your stitch markers, just to make sure and check that you're on the right track. It's not necessary for you to know, but it really helps you be sure that you're on the right track. So I'm just going to keep going until I get to my next stitch marker. Okay, I've made it all the way to my next stitch marker. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to be doing an increase into this stitch. I'm going to be marking the very first stitch that I did for the increase. I'm going to be doing an increase into the middle stitch. I'm gonna take my stitch marker out. I kind of crocheted over it a while ago, that's why it's so hard to come out right now. And then I'm going to increase again. So you're gonna be doing 3 increases whenever you get to your marked stitches. Going to mark that very last one, and then in between here will be 12 again. So I'm just going to do 12 all the way down. Okay guys, so I made it to the end of my second row, and if y'all just want the bottom of your bag to be this width, then you can start once again just working up the sides by doing no increases. Or if y'all want to come along with me and make it wider. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out and I'm going to do my slip stitch as well as my chain 1. Okay guys, so I took my stitch marker out and now I'm going to be doing an increase into the stitch where I had my stitch marker. I'm going to mark the first stitch if I can get it in there. And then I'm just going to be doing 1 single crochet into the next. And then into the next stitch, I'm going to be doing an increase. So basically, it's just an increase, single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase, and then into the very last mark stitch is just a single crochet. So that's basically the pattern. Increase, single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase, and then a single crochet right here. And then I'm going to mark the stitch. I really don't have to mark all the stitches except for the last stitch in this row because this is my last increase row. But if you guys want to do another increase row, then keep marking your stitches. I wouldn't recommend doing another increase row though, because when this is all finished, I'll show you guys the width. I don't really know if there's any bags where you would need the bottom any wider than doing 3 rows. That's what I recommend, but it's up to you guys. This is fully customizable. So I'm just gonna keep going down until I get to my next stitch marker, and then we're just gonna be doing our increase, single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase, single crochet. And yes, you guys, you will be fighting with this yarn. I'm not gonna lie. This yarn really hurts my hands, but you get used to it after a while. I'm going to take out this stitch marker. I'm going to do my increase. Let's mark this first stitch. Then I'm gonna do one more in the same stitch. Then I'm gonna do a single crochet, a single crochet, and then I'm just gonna work all the way down until I get back to my very last stitch. Okay, I've made it to my very last stitch. I'm gonna take my stitch marker out. I'm gonna do my slip stitch. Just gotta force it in there, y'all. Tighten that slip stitch and then do my chain one. Okay, so you guys, at this point we've made up the bottom of our bag. You can keep going if you want, but I feel like this is a perfect width for the bottom of any bag. Honestly, for my beach bag, I did the same amount. It even looks wider right now. Maybe my tension's different or something. I don't know, but it's the perfect width. If you wanted the bag to be wider, then you could have done more in your chain. But now we're gonna start working up the sides. At this point, you can literally do any stitch you want. Like literally any stitch, you can make any bag. Okay guys, so because we're working up the sides of the bag, we're only going to be doing our single crochets into the back loops. Only for this row though, we're trying to get our work to go upwards. So for my first stitch, I'm going to be going into the back loop. I'm going to mark my first stitch. The more you do this, the less you have to mark it. Honestly, you don't really have to mark your work because it's kind of obvious where the first stitch is. But I would recommend, if you're just starting out, to just mark your stitch just to be sure. So I'm just going to go around, no increases, just a single crochet in every single stitch in the back loop. So I don't know if you guys can see, but the work is curving upwards now. And then there's just this like really nice edge. So that's basically why we only work into the back loop. Okay, you guys, so I made it back to my very last stitch. As you guys can see, it's folding up, it's going upwards. I just wanted to remind you guys, do not work into the slip stitch or the chain one. So whenever you get to the end of your row, it's gonna look like you have 2 stitches before you get to the marked stitch. Don't work into these 2. Just ignore those 2. Those are your slip stitches and your chain ones. So now I'm going to do a slip stitch into my first stitch of the row. I'm going to chain 1. And I'm going to do a single crochet right back into that same stitch that I did my slip stitch and my chain 1. And then I'm going to mark it again. I want you guys to mark your first stitch. Don't get cocky, just mark your first stitch, guys. So at this point, if you're just going to be doing a regular single crochet stitch, honestly, whichever stitch you're doing, you can just work up for however many rows you want. So you're gonna do 9 more of these single crochet rows, and then we can get started on whichever handle you guys want to do. I'm going to be explaining to you guys a few different handle types. I won't be doing them completely, but I'll just guide you basically to doing some different handle types. So I'm going to keep working. This is what our bag is looking like, super pretty. So if at this point you wanted to make a strap like this or a strap like this one, you would cut your yarn off. You'd cut your yarn off and reattach your yarn. You'd like, you know, try to find the middle, make sure it's even, and then you would attach your yarn right here. For this bag, I did 2 single crochets, and then for this bag, I think I may have done 3 or 4. So it just depends on the width of the strap that you want. You just do a single crochet, so you could do like 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 single crochets, just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you have a long enough one. You cut the yarn off, and I recommend sewing the strap onto here using a darning needle instead of like slip stitching it on. I feel like it lays flat, more flat that way. So if you want the bag to look like, well, the handle to look like one of these that goes in the round, I recommend just taking the bag, folding it in half. Depending on how like wide you want your circle, you either do more or less. You go through both sides of the piece, so you have it folded in half. You just go through both sides of the piece, you pull up, you do a slip stitch, and then you just single crochet around the stitches in circles going all the way up. And then you do the same thing on this side, so you join this side, you do a slip stitch, and then you work in circles all the way up and then join it in the center. I feel like joining it in the center just looks a lot more neat once again. So that's how you would get one of these like round handles. For this bag, we're going to be doing it like how I did my beach bag. So as you can see right here, the straps are in the middle and not on the end. So right now we're going to just single crochet. Whenever I get to a point, I start chaining. If you want your straps to be longer, you chain like a really long chain, and then you reattach it on this side. So that's what you do for a beach bag or just any bag where you have one of these longer straps or like 2 of these longer straps in the middle. I want to measure where I want my straps, so I'm going to fold this in half as best as I can, and I'm going to count. So for this back part, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm gonna mark that with a stitch marker, and then on this side we just look at where the middle is as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I guess 7 lands right on our first stitch right here. So the reason why my seam moves over is because when I slip stitched and chained 1, I didn't turn my work. If you want your seam to just be straight up, you have to turn your work, but I don't mind. I don't think it looks bad. It's not really that obvious, and this could also be the back of the bag, so I don't turn my work. If you want to, you can, and that will keep your seam straight. Mine is a little slanted. I don't mind that. I genuinely don't mind. So I'm just going to mark the other side, so we're still in half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it matches up perfectly right there. So I'm just gonna mark it, and then for the next side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm missing a stitch marker, my yellow stitch marker. Here it is. Okay, so I'm just going to mark this one. Everything lines up perfectly. I'm just going to continue my single crochets until I get to my very first stitch marker. Okay, so I've made it to my stitch marker. I'm going to put my last stitch into that same stitch that has the marker on it. And then you can kind of just chain up however many you want. I think 10 is pretty good. So now I'm just going to go into the stitch that has the stitch marker and do a single crochet and just work all the way around. Since I'm at the end of my row, I'm just going to do my slip stitch right here, my chain 1, and then I'm basically just going to work around the piece, also into the chains, and I'm gonna do that for 2 more rows. So we only have 2 more rows left to go, guys. Let's finish up our bags. They're already so pretty. So I've made it back to my chain stitches, what I'm gonna tell you guys to do, this makes the handle look so much better. You're gonna try to flip the chain over and work into the back loops instead of into the top of the V. It just makes everything look more, you know, finished. Just gotta shove it in there, you guys. I think that's my catchphrase for this video. There we go. You should have 10 single crochets here on the strap. Just gotta take your finger, spread it out, make it work. Okay, you guys, so I'm going to do my final stitch. And instead of joining in the round, I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving like a good tail. I just have this much of the grain left, so gonna pull this through, and I'm just gonna use my darning needle to do an invisible closure. I'm not sure if that's what it's called, but that's what I call it. So basically, to do the invisible closure, you're gonna go into the bottom of the V, basically where you would put your hook if you were doing a regular stitch. You pull through, but then for this side, you go through the center. So you're gonna go through the center of that last stitch that you did, and basically that's how you do it. Now it just looks like an invisible, like it just looks like single crochets. And now I'm gonna flip this and just weave my yarn in. So that's it, you guys. The bag is finished. So after weaving it in however much you want, you can just cut the remaining tail off, and then that's your bag, you guys. Super cute. So cute. Okay, you guys, that's the end of the video. If y'all have any tips or any little comments on how I did with the tutorial, let me know. I tried to be more conversational, but I don't know if you guys would like that. If you guys want me to just teach you and tell you what's going on, then let me know in the comments. But if y'all liked my little commentary while I was showing you guys what to do, also let me know. But I had so much fun filming this tutorial for you guys. I hope I was able to help you guys make any t-shirt yarn bags y'all see on Pinterest. Like, I know sometimes I'm looking at a bag and I'm like, how they do that? Hopefully I was able to help you guys with that. And if y'all use any of my tips to make any of these bags, my Instagram, I'll have it linked. You guys can either send me videos or tag me or whatever. I don't mind. I just want to see what you guys create. So if you enjoyed today's video, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.